Welcome back to our first day in the International Cybersecurity Competition and Conference. All right. So it is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker here. Dan Meacham is a respected cybersecurity expert with over 25 years of experience in the field. He is currently the Vice President of Global Security and Corporate Operations for Legendary Entertainment, a movie and television studio best known for Dune, Interstellar, Dark Knight, one of my favorite, Godzilla, and Detective Pikachu. Great movie. He is here with us speaking about changing the game, why innovation is key to success. Please help me welcome to the stage Dan Meacham.
Thank you, Eric.
Senor.
Appreciate it. First off, thank you for letting me come out and talk to you guys today about some of the different things that we do at Legendary, innovation, and the different steps. I also want to thank all our sponsors for being here, because without them, it makes it really tough to pull these different things off. And then also, thank you guys for making the trip to come out here. That's quite the ways to come out. And remember, you guys are the best of the best, and that's why you represented your particular regions when we come through this. So get all excited about these different things. So hopefully, this is going to be fun. You guys just buckle up. We'll talk through a couple of different things. I know it says innovation is the key to success. I had a really cool title, but they told me that profanity doesn't translate well, so we had to go with this one. But anyway, so let's go ahead and jump in. So a lot of times when people think about innovation, they think of like a curve and everything else like that. Well, the truth is, that's not really an innovation curve, really. Because when you think about it, when things kind of go, it's the graph of all things. And the clicker, there we go. Because whatever it is, over time, it's just going to go up. Whether it's the cyber attacks, the malwares, the sophistication of the attack, or just size of storage. I mean, when I first started out, we had these really massive, large floppy disks, and now they're much smaller. I mean, a postage stamp can carry several terabytes worth of data, which is insane. And also, our cloud asset cost continues to grow over time, even though the efficiency allows us to do more things with the cloud. And then also, you could say that because of smartphones, the amount of time everybody spends in the bathroom has gone up over time as well. So, nonetheless, but what I'd like for you guys to think about when we think about innovation, let's think of it as a linear line, right? And a lot of times when we think about innovation, we think about the evolution, and in particular, like the evolution of technology, right? And so with that evolution of technology, you think about like how phones have changed over time, right? When I started out, my first computer was a Timex Sinclair ZX81. So that gives you a clue right there. It's from 1981. But nonetheless, it came with a 16K expansion pack, which was like really huge. And I remember reading through the manual, and we laugh about it at work today because it says the 16K expansion pack is going to give you up to almost 10,000 lines of code, but don't worry, nobody will ever write a program that has 10,000 lines of code, right? Not necessarily the truth. But when we think about this evolution and everything else with it, let's think of it as the diameter of a universe, right? And within this diameter of the universe is our technology that we put in. So when we think about how our technology has changed over time, we filled up this whole bubble. As the innovation continues to grow, there's more things that we can actually throw in there. So when I first started out, remember we had the old modems, and then they went from 96 baud. I mean, it was super slick when you got your 14.4. Nothing could ever be faster than the 14.4. Also, I know, the 52 came out, and that just kind of blew us away. And then the internet, right? But then when we also think about processing speeds, I remember at a time we would never go over 200 megahertz on a processor. It was just, that was the limit. We would never be able to break it. And then here we are, we're able to get to gigahertz and everything else, and teraflops and all these other different things on our processing speed. So it's amazing to think about how much these different things have changed over time. And I did bring a little bit of a prop I wanted to show with you guys. So if we think about that, right, as the technology grows, the innovation grows, technology pulls it as well, but then what also happens on top of that is the attack surface also grows at that same exponential rate as we think about all the different things that we start throwing into those different types of spaces, which is kind of crazy when you think about It would be so much easier if the world was back on Novell networks with IPX, because there are no botnets on IPX that are all on IP. And for all you guys that are my age and older would say like absolutely true, let's go back mainframe. But again, think about the interconnection of all these different pieces that we've had. When the car, as a great example, was very mechanical, right? When you push on the accelerator, it pulled a cable, it hit the little regulator that you had on the carburetor to allow more gas into the carburetor. Same thing with the brakes and applying the pressure that's in the braking mechanism. Well, now everything is drive-by-wire, meaning that you can adjust how tight the steering is, how loose the brakes are, and everything else. But I remember when cars first started getting computer chips in there, and all you got was, hey, the oil light was on or the check engine light. But that was a big deal. But then at some point, they were able to connect all those things together, right? So all the computers in the car now talk to each other, and they give you all worlds of information. And now they're fully integrated to other different things that says, hey, if I'm driving my car and I'm going to pick up my kid at school, it knows that there is a traffic delay. And it may say, do you want me to text your child to say you're going to be 15 minutes late because of traffic and let me reroute you? I mean, that is insane. We wouldn't have been able to do that 25 years ago, but that's because of the innovation and interconnection. But with that, then we run into all these different, crazy characters that we have out there that, will say, hey, on a Kia, I could pop out the headlight, plug right into it, and then I can drop some commands, and next thing you know, I can drive away in your Kia, because that integration of that computer system says, oh, hey, the light's out, and so since it's talking to the main computer, I can now get in and do cool things with that, right? So those are some of the different things that we got to kind of take a look at and think about. Hold on here, I got to get to where I am on my slide so we can kind of talk through that. Let it load. Perfect. So there's a lot of different things that we look at to how we want to compete these different things, and so we look at technology. And so that's why a lot of you guys are here, is because you really love technology and you really like to break technology, and who doesn't like to break technology, right? And there's a lot of really cool technologies that we have out there that kind of help us with this. So I'm sure you guys are all familiar with firewalls. Legendary, where I work, we've been cloud first for over a decade, all right? And so to that end, we've been really on the far edge on the innovation and the technology and everything else that we work with on that particular space. So how many of you guys are familiar with what a CASB is? Does anybody know? All right. So a CASB stands for Cloud Access Security Brokerage. So when they came out 10 years ago or so, it was all about data loss prevention and shadow IT, right? You got to make sure that the accounting department wasn't doing something stupid on the cloud kind of thing. Well, it's a great piece. So I think the best way to explain and talk about it is if I had a network, because I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with networks, and I have a Cisco router, a Fortinet, maybe a Palo Alto, and so forth. If I'm going to manage those things, I have to log in manually to each one's console to make those configurations. And then there's certain technologies that are out there, other different brands like a SolarWinds, that gives you this overlay that I go into one place, and I can execute policy, and it hits all those disparate brands. So the CASB is pretty much the same thing for cloud applications and cloud services. So a CASB will integrate with your AWS, your Google, your Microsoft. It will connect to your Box and all these other different platforms that are out there. And so if I were to create a policy that says I don't want to have personal information or credit card numbers leak the company, that policy then applies to everything in the cloud that is managed by that CASB. So it makes it a lot easier, because I could write a code inside Microsoft that says, look for this in email. I can write a code inside my collaborative space, like a Box or Dropbox, to say, or Baidu, and say, look for this information to make sure it's not there, right? But at the CASB level, allows me to write that in and put it across everything, which is really cool. And what we ended up doing with that is, we were talking to our CASB guys, and we're like, hey, if you can have the APIs to touch these things, look for this information, then can you look for malware? Can you also look for configuration modifications and changes? And so we were able to work with them over the years, and that's where you have today, where the CASB isn't just data loss prevention and shadow IT. It will actually scan your environment to say, hey, you have this S3 bucket that is not encrypted. Do you want me to encrypt it for you, right? And really cool things like that. And of course, everybody knows about MDR and EDR. That's your antivirus terms for today. And then you also have ISO, the SSO and that's the shingle sign-on, and that's your identity and access management, right? But here's the thing. As we have all these pocket of technology things that we work together to do these different things in our organization, they're all pretty much by themselves, right? They're in their own little islands. Now, they may feed all of their logs to our SIEM so we can look at things in our SOC and look for correlations, because access on the database may look normal, access on the network may look normal, and all this stuff that's going on, going out the network may look normal, but when you put it all together, you realize, oh, somebody attacked the database, and now they're taking all the data. And that's where the SIEM and the Security Operations Center comes through, which basically comes into what we need to talk about with these different things today. Because all these security solutions, they really only do one of two different things. They either initiate an action, like, hey, I found something, there's a blinky light, we need to do something, or they actually resolve or respond to an action, right? But in some cases, these things actually end up doing both. So you think like an antivirus may say, hey, I found a virus, and by the way, I'll take it away for you. Or the CASB saying, hey, the S3 bucket's not encrypted, let me encrypt it for you or tell you how to do it. But when we look at all these different things that we have today, when they're initiating or they're resolving, those are just those standalone security solutions. Some of them I can send an action to, like through a SOAR, some of them I cannot. But what we're missing here is none of these actions go out and pull information. So I may have artificial intelligence, I may have machine learning built in my system, and it does an excellent job that says, hey, I identify this as a certain type of phishing attack, or I see this as an indicator of compromise, and it has those user behavioral analytics that it pulls from, but it's in its own little silo. And what we need to work on today is we need to have our security solutions to be smarter, right? We need to be able to say, all right, I have my external collaboration tool. I see that I have this person logging in from a different country. What do I need to know about that? And so that's where we're looking at creating a shared learning intelligence platform. We call it a SLIP. This is the next generation thing that we're building over at Legendary. And you guys can go ahead, make all the SLIP jokes you want. That's fine. I hear you snickering over there. That's fine. But the way that you think about this is the CASB for all of our machine learning and intelligence things that we have out there, right? So we can have a two-way communication. So like in that little piece that we have up there from our Security Operations Center, it says, hey, this person does all their work from Australia. They worked on the first Godzilla movie or whatever, and all these other different pieces. So why are they logging in from this other country, like Middle East or Romania or whoever, not to pick on Europe, guys, because we will, because they're winners. Anyway, so when we look at these different things, Box may say, hey, this person logged in, and they've never logged in from here before, this is bad. Where if we had that slip in place, it may realize, oh, this is the first time we ever invited this person to access the environment. So therefore, it may be okay because this is the first time they're doing it. Or we may say, oh, well, I know from the other different systems, they are traveling to that country because we do travel to different countries for all the different movies that we do, and maybe that is okay. And then what about if I'm able to look at the corresponding communications that we have in the email to know that I'm expecting somebody to be traveling? Right? And so these are the different things that we're trying to incorporate and build within our particular platform and calling it a SLIP, right? So when we think about this, we have existing machine learning language, we have existing user behavioral analytics, and we also have these new things called natural language processing, right? So this is like really cool stuff. So how do we kind of take what we know today and how do we integrate to do really cool things going forward? How do we innovate based off of what we already have to make something better? Well, during COVID, we were kind of bored, so we decided to see what we could figure out to do. And as you know, we always are trying to protect our intellectual property. And sorry, I should have worn my Godzilla shoes because one of my favorite things is we take down unlicensed merchandise from around the world because they didn't pay us money to put our graphics on there. And sometimes the things are really cool, like sneakers. We'll buy them first, and then we'll sue them. But nonetheless, in this particular case, we have so many different solutions that look for pirated movies and is able to find the pirated movies and bring them down, and we take them offline because we lose revenue and the revenue stream on how you make money. And for those of you that don't know, there's a great clip, I think Will Wheaton had shared it on social media, where one of his friends is going through pages and pages of all these parts where they were in Orange is the New Black, and it's like money, 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 and they get down to the bottom and they got like $2 or something like that. And that's what you have to realize is just because you make a movie doesn't mean you make a lot of money from the movie. The actors, the writers, and everybody else may get like pennies on a dollar based off of how many times it's viewed. And so then if it's out there for free, then they don't get paid for it, and they don't get the money from like the Netflix and things like that. But nonetheless, we took the anti-piracy software out there, and we worked with our particular partner and was like, hey, you do a great job of finding our pirated movies, but what if we're looking for a picture? And they're like, well, that's stupid. Why would anybody be looking for a picture? And it's like, well, because sometimes we have set leaks and things like that. We need to find it. And so during COVID, when we were releasing Dune, we did a couple of different pilots where we released the trailer in IMAX in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And we gave away these postcards to invite people to that screening. And some person was real excited in Japan. They posted it up there, and it was great. So we decided, let's see if we can find this picture. And so when we put this picture into Google image search or to 10i, and again, remember, this is 2020 or 2021, it couldn't find the picture, right? So we recreated this algorithm, and instantly, under 20 seconds, it found the image. And it told us how many times people had actually retweeted it. It told us who exactly it was that posted that picture. And then, this is where our AI stuff, machine learning, gets really cool. Then it said, hey, I think that postcard's important. And so then it showed us all the people around the world that had uploaded that postcard in different settings. But yet, it was smart enough to know the postcard. And so that was, the accuracy is to find the original one. The relevancy is to say what is important. But then, it even has its own algorithm and stretch scroll and said, you know what, I know I found the postcards, but I see that silhouette of Paul Atreides and Jessica. I also found them on this poster. Is that what you're looking for? And as you see there, the relevancy is only 14%. And that's because, one, it is not the postcard. It's not in Japan. It doesn't have a bear or anything else. But it recognizes the silhouette of the images there, which just knocks your socks off. And so we had a partner studio that we were working with, and they had a leak from one of their television shows. And while we were building this, they're like, hey, can we borrow that? Can you run this for us? And it's like, sure, no problem. So they gave us an image that they found on Instagram. We put it in there, and instantly it says, yep, here's the person. And they're like, holy crap, that's the director of episode 4. Why is he sharing set photos? And then it says, oh, wait, there's more. Because I recognize whatever was in the background, here's 6 other pictures we found out there as well that were from different people that have posted the same thing. And so, they were just in complete shock, and because this was a super secret television show they were working on. So since then, we've been able to work on different things to where we actually have a kill button. So it's not so much to immediately take down this picture, but we can take down all pictures that are relevant to having that postcard if we want. So like, say for example, we may have an inappropriate picture of one of our talent while they were changing or something like that, and it's out there, it's gone viral. Click a button, we can destroy it all and get rid of it right away. Now, that's only for the things that we can see that are public. Things that are behind paywalls and Discord servers, things like that are a little bit more challenging. But those are the innovation components that we're working on and how we find these things. So now you're like, oh, thanks, Dan. You're such a buzzkill because we love to download movies and everything else, and you're telling us the secrets to your sauce of saying don't do that anymore. But, so there you go. So that's kind of interesting. So, but how do we make it better, right? So how do we make something like that better? And this is where we're starting to look at, well, what's out there today, generative AI. And I know you hear all this buzz about ChatGPT or Google Bard or whatever, and everyone's like, this is the newest thing since sliced bread. Well, if you think about slices, generative AI is maybe a tiny pie piece of the overall intelligence space that we work in today. And you think about, hey, Alexa, Siri, Google, all those have always been there. You always say, hey, Alexa, play My Little Pony, pulls it right up for you, and everything else. So those things have already been there today. We've also had the AI, machine learning, and the other different pieces that we work with to, help us look for those indicators of compromise. So if I know that my threatscape is this big, my indicator of compromise and my taxonomy has 7 steps, and I see 1, 3, 4, I should better be looking for 5, 6, and 7. Right? I can do those different things. So the question is how do we embrace or engage generative AI? Now, here's a secret to success for when you guys get out in the workforce. A couple of different things. One, always understand what is the problem you're trying to solve. Don't just do things just because you can, right? So when you do things in your management meetings or anything else, always ask the question, well, what are we trying to solve? Because is it good enough or is it not? Or how are we fixing these things? And then really focus on solving that particular problem, right? Then the other thing too and this is where it gets really, really cool, is have other people pay for your budget, right? So if I want to bring in generative AI into my company, I don't want to say, oh, we're going to do this for security. We're going to do it for other different business purposes, right? So, because generative AI is pretty freaking crazy, right? And so how do I take generative AI, bring it into Legendary in a safe and secure manner, and have somebody else pay for it? Well, step one, let's say give it a prompt. Summarize the following scene from Interstellar. And I cut the screen, so anyway, by the way, screenplays and scripts are out there on the internet, they're free. We're not taking those down, so you can find any one you want. Take one, carve a section out, put it in this case, we're using Google Bard. Say, hey, summarize this scene for me. And it does an amazing job of telling you what happened, right? So when we look at our post-production crew and everything else, they have to do this on a regular basis to see what kind of visual effects they're going to add in, or what the director's what is the director thinking, or what we're trying to do on these different pieces. And so for it to spit this out in under 20 seconds, where normally it could take somebody a week to write, that's invaluable. Then, and this is where some of the writers are getting a little nervous on. Don't think of generative AI as taking away jobs. Think of it as the spell checker to your word processor, right? We used to have people that would have to take the pieces of paper from the typewriter and go through and make the updates and everything else, and then they had to retype it, and then we had a word processor. Now we have, spell checker. So in this particular case, it's making it much more efficient for us. And so I could take a particular scene and say, oh, that's a great summary. Make the lead character Caribbean. What does that look like? Make it sound like, I don't know, Donald Trump is talking. It does some really cool things on how it can manipulate. Or I could say, make it darker. Make it more like a thriller or sci-fi. And you do this with music. So you could take all of your Disney music that's out there and say, change it to F minor or something like that. And it makes it really scary and creepy, right? So these are the different things. So that's what's kind of cool. Now, the next thing, too, is think about it from the business. And so from this perspective, I have a lot of data, right? I have things that are in shared media, I have things on servers, things on hard drives. If I can use this like how Google search was intended to be done on the desktop in 2003, harvest all this information in there, and then I can say, tell me about this particular vendor, or is this contract in favor of us, or what are the other different pieces that we have that are out there, right? So if it can actually touch all of my data in my organization, and I say, tell me everybody that has done a contract with this particular piece, it can pull it through, and then what is the master service agreement and other different things. So there's a lot of business intelligence that you can pull from this. Same thing if you want to think about like sales data or something like that. If you're in a company that has to deal with different regions of the world that you're trying to work on supply chain, how can I pull this information in from other different areas? Pretty fascinating, because again, when we think about generative AI, it's really cool that you can give it prompts. But I told you to think about it like as a spell checker, because I don't know, say 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if I wanted to make a cake, I would have to pull out the cookbook and look up the cake recipe. When the internet came about, I just typed in, show me a cake recipe on the internet. And sure enough, it would burp out what somebody had taken from a book and put it online. Well, with the generative AI, and I say, hey, I want to make a cake, he may say, hey, I see you like chocolate cake. And then with that, and say, I see you also like red wine, so let's make a red wine chocolate cake. Oh, and by the way, grandma's diabetic, so I'm going to replace sugar with monk fruit, and Susie over here is gluten-free. So therefore, we're going to make a gluten-free, sugar-free wine chocolate cake. And by the way, we tried this out, and bless my wife's heart, she made this cake, and our little nephew, he was like, oh, he's a huge chocolate fan. He was like all excited. He took a bite and says, oh, Aunt Dee, who's going to eat this when it tastes gross? It's like, but you know what? We got to navigate through that. So there's a lot of learning opportunities, so don't take everything with generative AI as you expect it. But I think we could probably do more with this. So say, for example, I say, hey, I want to make a game. Let's make a dice game. So maybe I just say, hey, draft code in C# of a dice game. There it goes, right? So that's pretty impressive. So it's not going to replace all the programmers in the world, but it would have probably taken me a week to figure this out, right? Because I'm not that good of a coder anymore, especially not in C#. But nonetheless, this is your pseudocode. So now I have the base code for a dice game. Now maybe I want to add color to my dice. Maybe I want to change different rules or something else. I can build on that. So if it's 80% of what I'm wanting to do, I can add other different things on. So maybe I want to say, for example, draft code to make a bot play my dice game. And the generative AI says, this is how you make a bot to play your dice game. Now that is pretty freaky, weird, and crazy, right? The robots are going to take over the world. But before you feel bad about how bots work, you know, Inky, Pinky, Clyde, all those guys in Pac-Man, those are bots. And then also those that play Fortnite know that Fortnite's gotten really good on having bots play in their game. And actually there is a leaderboard that will tell you which bots have the most victory royales. It's insane. So if you want to go talk with those guys. So I think when we take a step back and we say, okay, so we have analysis of historical data patterns, right? I can build relational awareness based off this. I can have the generative AI draft code, all right? And I can also have it, you know, do all these other different things with regards to creating bots and everything else, right? What if I asked it to say, hey, draft code that will generate prompts for Google Bard based on changes to weather in San Diego? So it wrote its own code that is perpetually monitoring the weather, and as the weather changes, it creates new prompts to Bard to generate new code. That is insane, all right? So now, what does that mean? That means we have perpetual prompting, perpetual AI that we're actually introducing. So, you know, we're kind of leading things into Skynet or what have you. And I would show a cool Skynet thing with Terminator, but it's not our movie, so too bad. Anyway, so we just took, you know, some planets blowing up. But nonetheless, how do we kind of think about this and pull all these different things together, right? Because, you know, innovation is amazing. We can do some really cool things with it, but, and, you know, we've done some amazing things being cloud first for the last 10 years to really touch on these different things and stay on the edge and working with different partners and working with students and interns and everything else like yourself to do this. But the things I think I want you to kind of think about when we look at this and we kind of take away from it is, how do I leverage the existing faculties to drive that innovation, right? It's not, just because you're in security, everything isn't a breach, right? How do I get the business to pay for this? How do I, you know, when we think about like business intelligence tools, BI tools that are out there, the finance team, the sales team love to use those. You can use that same technology and innovation today to put all of your security information in to get a different lens. And I think that's where this generative AI is really starting to shine and apply those different things. And then likewise, you know, security solutions, well, we need to be able to share that intelligence. So now that we have the generative AI, we're building this particular slip that's going to say, I see something over here, how do I know what it is? Can I reach out and pull information to build information? How can I use that generative AI and that natural language processing to say, I can share this information before? Because before, when we had a computer at home, you know, if I wanted to play video games, I had the right to video games myself. It would, you know, we would get a little magazine that you get at the drugstore, and at the back it'd have like 10, 20 lines of code on how to play tic-tac-toe, and we would type it in. And then over time, then you had cartridges and consoles and things like that. And then you had your first home computer. And you had to use floppy drives because you didn't have a hard drive, right? And then you could use a modem to get online. But then once the computer and the internet became more accessible, all the computers started talking with each other. And then you could do a lot more crazy things, right? Think about all the different things that you use that aren't on your computer, that may be on your phone, that may be in the cloud, that you go out and you reach into an application to see data. So these things continue to expand. And that's a lot of those things that we need to look at with the innovation. So why don't we look at this from a cybersecurity perspective to say, instead of just saying, you know, I'm good and I'm just going to have this whole vertical stack of my one solution and this is what I'm looking at, how do I get that intelligence and that information from the other different things? And so this is where you guys, the next generation, are going to come in and say, oh man, I remember this guy said, you know, these things don't talk to each other. And here we are, they're all talking to each other because you guys made a difference and made them talk to each other. I'm hoping. So that way I don't have to build it. So I can just buy it from you guys because I know all of you guys are going to be successful. And then, you know, sometimes the opportunities for good are also good for evil, right? And so when you think about the generative AI to be able to put in, again, our industry may be at fault for this, you know, because when we needed to reshoot a scene, sometimes we can't reshoot the scene because of schedules, because maybe our talent is working on another project or something. But we see them there and we say, you know what, let's have them just change the voiceover so they can just change the words. And then we use the generative AI to move the lips to the words. It happens all the time. You guys don't even notice it. And a lot of times we generate people in the background because we didn't have enough extras, like during COVID. Or we make people look younger, so you think of like Harrison Ford and the latest Indiana Jones, right? Great stuff that we do to do that, but then how hard is that for somebody to impersonate somebody else? And now we've seen a lot of those deep fakes and everything else. And so it makes it really quite challenging to understand what is real and what isn't real. So all these things that we do for good end up being accessible for people to do things that are bad. So, but anyway, so that's about it in a nutshell. I just want to say thank you again. I open to questions because we got plenty of time for questions. Do we have time for questions? Yes. Maybe?
We've got 8 minutes.
See, I was worried I was going to go over and I was trying to talk slow.
So I actually have one. So can you comment on, this morning I was at a meeting on generative AI, and somebody said this phrase, and I wrote it down. So it's AI will not take your job. A person using AI will.
Exactly, 100%. So if you think about law firms today, and there's a lot of tedious things, but it's very scriptive, and it's very repetitive, and it's very template-based. Like, if I want to do a trust in estates, or if I want to do a will, if I'm going to sue this guy over here because he's looking at me funny, right? There's different things that we can do that give us that information that says, okay, this is how you file the docket. This is what you're going to, this is the case law that's going to be based off and everything else. And so think about how that generative AI is going to help that lawyer to say, I need to find all cases that are similar to this. I need to find what grounds that we may have against this particular, or if I'm being sued, what are the different things that I have to say that why this is okay and what we did and how we did it, right? And having that generative AI is going to expand that LexisNexis law-based, dictionary and everything else to pull all that information to find things much quicker, more relevant to what's important to you. And so it isn't so much about these folks saying, well, we're just not going to use it in our organization. Well, then you're going to get passed up. Right? The lawyers that are using the technology are going to do better than the lawyers that did not. Same thing when you think about movies and entertainment. We're doing it today by making people look younger and doing other different things. If we didn't, now there are some classics, I think like the Oppenheimer movie, they didn't use a lot of visual effects that were computer-based. They actually did the old school kind of visual effects, which will probably give them some sort of award. Great work that they've done there. It's amazing the different things that you can do from that. But in the real world, not saying that movie's not the real world, but in the reality of things that are not media and entertainment, by not adopting these different things, you're going to get left behind. Think about how advances in medicine have gone today. Now they do everything with this little robots that go in and do everything laparoscopic. I can't say that word, but where the little needles go in and they cut and do all the other different things. So they don't really, it really shortens the amount of time that you're in the hospital, it shortens the amount of recovery that you got to do these things, and it makes things a little safer. Think about LASIK. Who would have ever thought that maybe, 75, 80 years ago, let me get that cataract. I got my little X-Acto knife out. I got you. That's not, you'd be like scared to death. And now they just do it with a laser. So I think absolutely 100%, it's not going to be replacing jobs, it's innovating jobs. And you think about how all the automation and everything else. So funny you should also say that, because nothing against English majors, but now they're going to have like the best job in the world. I am a generative AI prompt engineer. Oh, English major, So there you go. Yes, you have a question.
What's your take on the Sony compromise hack that probably happened during when you were working for?
Actually, it was because, Jason was a great guy. It was because of the Sony incident that I ended up where I am today. I was very fortunate that the CEO of our company at the time was like, get the best of the best, and it just so happens in that paper I was a Cybersecurity Leader of the Year, and they called me in, and they said, well, I need you to build an award-winning program, which we did, and this is what we're going to focus on. This is how we're going to look at different things, because it's really about protecting the data, protecting the user, protecting the device. That's where we created our user-centric security architecture, which everybody now calls Zero Trust, which we did that in 2015, so we're like, catch up, thank guys. That's why we're doing a slip. But the thing is, though, is in that particular case, and this is everything else that we got to look at, in our space, our biggest risk isn't our users, isn't our systems. Our biggest risk is our external collaborators. So when you think about a particular movie, and I challenge you guys to do this anytime, watch the movie, watch all the way to the very end. So you got to watch every single credit. That's about 7,000 people, 10,000 people that it takes to make a movie, right? Our company is maybe 225, 250 people. So all those other folks are external collaborators to make that particular movie. And so I may have the best security, I may have the best antivirus or anything else, but if he's got a copy of my movie and he's working out of his garage on his computer that he uses for everything and his kid plays Minecraft on it, how do I trust that? right? And so that's where you have to look at the user behavior analytics and everything else that says, hey, he has my data, how does he behave? How does he use it? When does he use it? What does he use it on? It's like he always uses a Mac. Why is he using an Android today? Why is he using that Android today from a different region, that is 40,000 miles away from where he normally is? And so that's where we have to look at some of these different things. And so the Sony incident, like all the other different incidents that are out there, is more of a wake-up call to say, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And then are we creating more exposure by solving that problem to do something else? Yes? Yes. So you have a partnership with the different platforms that are out there. And each platform has its own process in order to take an image down. So like we'd have to send an email to YouTube. They send it back and says, that's not really yours guys' property. Then we send them all the information. Because a lot of times something will leak out there and like, you don't have rights to this. How do you have rights to this? And I was like, well, the movie hasn't come out yet, but it's super secret. And then here's all the legal trademark and everything else we have on it already filed. It is, but in that case, for that particular product, that partner that helped build that has built all those different things on the back end for us. And because if they're initiating the takedown for us, they know that then it's been reviewed by us, it's been reviewed by them, and then it goes to them, so then they know that that is pretty legit for it to be taken down. And so even though it may be a click button for us, for them, they automate it on the back end through their business workflow processes. And if they don't have that service for that particular platform, like Threads is new, we have to go through our mechanisms to meet those requirements. It's pretty darn close on some of the things we can automate. Some things are very dead obvious, especially because we have a very similar platform that is looking at all like the Alibabas, the eBays, the Amazons, and Walmart, and all these different things that are looking for people that are selling action figures and T-shirts that aren't licensed. And there's different things that show that they are licensed, that they have like a logo or an icon or some other different piece. And we give them a chance to refute it. But some of the other ones, we don't let them. We just do it. We just take their money. All right. Well, I'm here most of the day if you guys need anything. I'm also on LinkedIn, happy to connect. But thank you again for the opportunity to come talk to you guys, and thank you guys for listening. Eric?